You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. It's great to have you with me here today. I'm looking forward to introducing you to today's special guest, and that is none other than Christine Hassler. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, it's great because a lot of times when I bring a guest on the show, it's what I feel that will bring a lot of what I'm not bringing maybe to my audience, to my community, that I think they will benefit from. So when I was going through a lot of because people recommend a lot of people to be on the Cabral Concept, and we only do maybe one or two guest interviews per month, and your name had come up a couple times, and so I checked out your website, the work that you have, and it is, I think, really progressive, and I like where it's moving, because as we start to get into this, you're going to talk about personal growth, but from a little different perspective, meaning that it's not going to be as hard, like a yang-based perspective. We call it like in traditional Chinese medicine, and one from maybe something more of compassion. So I can't wait to get into that. Can't wait for you to share that with my community. So what I do is when I have people on the show, I always want to do them justice. So when someone asks you, what do you do? How do you respond to that?
It's such a hard question to respond to because I do, so much. I coach, I speak professionally, I lead retreats, I host a podcast, I write books. But basically, I say I'm in the personal transformation business, and I help people heal their past, change their present, and create the future that's in alignment with their soul.
I really like that. That's fantastic. It's a great line. I'm going to have to use that. So you do
the same thing.
You do that in a lot of different ways. And so what I want to talk about before we get into that is a lot of us, people in this health-based space who just they wouldn't be able to breathe if they couldn't share their message with others. So we typically have a story, and I don't know your story. How did you get into this personal transformation and personal growth space?
So I'll tell the short version of the story. I moved out to Hollywood at 20, graduated college a little bit early to pursue a career in the entertainment industry. I didn't want to be an actress. I wanted to work behind the camera. I fascinated about being a big-time Hollywood producer. And I worked my way up, and working your way up in Hollywood takes a lot of hours and a lot of grit. And I was becoming quite hard. And when I really checked in terms of why I was pursuing this career in Hollywood, it really wasn't coming from a healthy place. I, as a kid, was teased. I felt very left out. I was a super late bloomer. So I never felt like I fit in with the popular crowd. I never felt like I had friends. And I think I chose to pursue a career in Hollywood because I was trying to prove myself. And in my mind, Hollywood was similar to the adult version of the popular crowd. I thought if I could prove myself in such a public field that it's really hard to be successful, then maybe people will like me. And so it was really insecurity that drove me rather than true inspiration or a passion. And I kept checking boxes off. I kept getting promoted. I kept getting more money. I, had a boyfriend that was head of a movie studio. So my life was Oscars and Golden Globes and first class everything. And no matter what I did, I still wasn't happy. And P.S., I had been put on antidepressants at 11 years old. And so fighting depression and anxiety and being medicated was something that I dealt with for a long time. I also started getting migraines in 5th grade. I also had what they called quote unquote delayed puberty. So I was put on synthetic hormones. I'm sure your stomach is
unbelievable. I mean, it really is.
I know. And
conventional medicine never surprises me. It's unbelievable.
I know. And you can imagine, what that did to my thyroid and pituitary gland. Oh, and I was also taking Accutane, which is a very, very strong drug. And because of the headaches, aspirin every day, painkillers, so I was just, my answer was pills. And I think the truth was, my parents did the best they could. And growing up as a kid in the 80s, there wasn't as much education as there is now. And they just saw me suffering and wanted to help. And the truth was, I was just a very sensitive kid. Like, I was super intuitive. I would consider myself an empath, a highly sensitive person. And so much of what I was feeling and dealing with was sensitivities to other people's emotions, sensitivities to gluten, sensitivities to toxins, all the stuff that I know you're so passionate about. And I just didn't know it at the time. And so, my life was, and my goals weren't from an authentic place, because I really didn't know who I was, because I'd been so kind of dedicated and disconnected from myself. So there came a time in my Hollywood career where I just got to the point where I was having panic attacks. I just hated my job. And I decided to resign. And it wasn't an easy decision, because I worked so hard to get there. I went to college to pursue TV and film. But I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that was the first real leap of faith I took, because so much of my life had been planned. I took great comfort in planning. I was totally type A, needed to know, did not like uncertainty. So that leap of faith was a bit of a free fall. I made money being a personal trainer. And at the same time, I was estranged from my family, because my mom and I got into a pretty bad argument about something. I was engaged, and my fiance broke up with me 6 months before our wedding. I went into a lot of debt because I wasn't making the money that I was used to making. And then my health just got worse. Autoimmune type symptoms started showing up. I'm sure that's no surprise. And I had my rock bottom moment, or what I called my quarter life crisis. I thought I coined the term. I thought I was pretty brilliant for that, but it had actually been around since the 80s. But I really felt like my life was crashing down. And I know people listening have been through way worse, but in that moment, that was kind of it for me. And that was my pivot point. That was when I really looked at, all right, well, I've created all of this. I can either be a victim, or I can be a seeker. And luckily, I had a really amazing coach slash counselor at the time. And I just dove headfirst into personal development and holistic healing and nutrition and spirituality, and was looking for the book for a 20-something woman who was going through this. And there were lots of books on how to build your career, get the guy or whatever, but there was nothing on how do you deal with the inside? Like, how do you transform and heal from the inside out? And I thought, well, if there's not a book out there, I'll write one. And that's my first book was called 20-something, 20 everything. I found my knack and my passion for coaching. After that, I went back and got 2 master's degrees in spiritual psychology and consciousness, health, and healing, and done a lot of training and just a lot of life experience. That's how it all began.
That's amazing. And I love to see how many people start in this overall health industry, because we're all in the health industry, with personal training. And it just seems like that is one of the leaping, boards to get into personal training. And again, there's nothing wrong at all. I think personal training is one of the most best careers in the world. I think it's one of the most rewarding careers in the world, because you get to work with psychology, you get to work with nutrition, with exercise, because you're seeing people more than they see most of their friends. The only people that they may see more in their life are maybe their kids and their partner. Like, that's about it. So I think it's a very rewarding career, but it's interesting to me how many people then decide to say, okay, what other avenues does this lead down? And it seemed like that was the case for you as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that was where I discovered that people didn't want to work out. They just wanted to talk to me. And people in their 50s were asking me for life advice. And when I was writing the book and interviewing people, like I interviewed women in their 20s and women in their 50s, I kept hearing, oh, can I just set up another session with you? And so when you hear, I think the universe is consistently sending us messages. It's just, are we too tunnel vision and miss them? Are we open to them? Are they not super clear enough so we don't follow the breadcrumbs? And it was just one of those things that I found my way, I think, back to what truly is my essence, like what I'm truly here to do. And one thing that I find really interesting is the original definition of the word passion is suffering. It comes from the Passion of the Christ. And over time, we've evolved that word to mean what we love. And I think for so many people, what we're so passionate about comes from our suffering. And it doesn't mean like you necessarily have to make it your job, but if you're super passionate about, a certain way that you're eating because it's cured your autoimmune disease, that passion came from your suffering. So I think that for anyone that's in suffering right now, just be open to the possibility that this could be something that eventually you're helping others with.
Totally agree. Actually, it's funny because I did a podcast on this just a couple weeks back, that a lot of times, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. but it was getting very sick at 17 years old that crystallized to me that I don't know how long I have to live. And then everything started to become much more crisp. Like I could just see the world in a different way. I didn't feel connected with the old me. The old me was gone. And so one of the things that, really struck me that you were talking about before is you decided to become a seeker rather than a victim. But what I find a lot of times is that people don't even see themselves as a victim. They actually see this as their life. No, this is just how everyone in their family lives. This is how it's always been. They're just destined to be this way. So they don't actually accept 100% responsibility, because when you do that, life can start to get really scary. And it means that if you're responsible for everything in your life, that can be very overwhelming. So you had a coach, which I just think everybody needs, or they need a plan, a blueprint. They need to be following along with something from someone who's already been there, that maybe it's not their exact path, their destiny, but you at least need a flashlight in the dark. And so tell me a little bit about your coach, where they led you, and then how has that kind of shifted today? Like how have you kind of morphed it into your own?
Yes, I will. I just would love to go back to something that you said to help people that get scared about the concept of realizing that everything is your responsibility. That is scary because you're like, wait, I got in a car accident. That's my responsibility. I got cancer. That's my responsibility. It can feel terrifying, and you can really feel like you're messing your life up. So one thing that I found comforting is to remember that on so many levels, we have no clue about how life works in terms of if there are past lives, if there are other dimensions, spirituality, like there's a lot we know and there's a lot we don't know. And I do believe that we are co-creators of our life. And the way I look at responsibility is I'm a co-creator of my life. And maybe I'm not responsible for every little thing that happens, but I am responsible for how I respond to it. When I shifted into that, like, oh, wow, like if something bad goes wrong, I don't need to beat myself up thinking I created it. But I do have full responsibility of how I respond to it. And just having that little shift in perception with responsibility really helped me deal with the fear. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think that's a good way to put it, because when I got sick at 17 years old, I got sick not really through my fault. I didn't know like not to take antibiotics every day for 3 years, or, drink Kool-Aid and, all of these other different types of things. I didn't know about stress and the fight or flight, just like you didn't know a lot about these things. But when you do know, when you do find out, I believe that is the time then you then accept responsibility. But before that, it's not necessarily your fault. There's so many people out there right now using acid blockers. And I was just quoting research the other day, how your chances for stomach cancer, kidney disease, and heart disease go through the roof. But those people weren't choosing to use acid blockers. They went to their doctor, and their doctor gave them that. They didn't know. So I just think at some point, though, if we seek the education, that's a great first step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to come back to your question about seeking education, my coach, her name was Mona. She is no longer physically on this planet. She died several years ago, unexpectedly in a car accident, which was devastating for me because by the time she died, I had been working with her for about 14 years. And she was like, a parent and a mentor to me. And when I first started seeing her, she was very unconventional. She saw people in her house. She wore sweatpants. My first session was in her son's bedroom, in his bunk bed, race car bed. But there was something about her in that she was the first, I guess you could say, professional that I sat across from that didn't look at me like a puzzle to solve, that didn't look at me like there was something wrong with me. Because I had been so used to going to psychiatrists and psychologists, and nothing against them in that profession. But the feeling that I went in was, all right, are you on the right medication? How's your depression? I just felt like it was always, I'm broken. How do I get fixed? And she just really held a space of unconditional love that was at first hard for me to receive, and would reinforce there's nothing wrong with you. There's really nothing wrong with you. You're just a soul working to evolve. And she helped me connect dots about my past, my parents, my own belief system. She taught me so much about emotions, how to release emotions, because a big part of my depression was just suppressing so many feelings for so long, which, as you know, can create disease in the body and also can affect mental health very severely. Yeah, I remember one session, She came in with a big pillow that was duct taped and a tennis racket and gardening gloves and said, put these gloves on, grab this racket, hit that pillow and scream. And I said, why? And she said, because you're angry, baby. And I'm like, I'm not angry. She's like, you are. You've had a lot happen that has pissed you off and you never have given that a voice. It's time to find your voice. It's time to scream. It's time to yell. And it was through doing anger work and emotional release work that eventually my headaches went away. And those were the kind of things that she taught me. And she also then taught me how to coach. I went to her a few years after working with her and I said, people are wanting me to become a coach. And she said, yeah, baby, that's your gift. She'd always call me baby. She called everybody baby. It was really cool. And I said, gosh, Mona, I've been coming to you for years. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? And she said, because it's not for me to tell you your purpose. It's for you to discover it. And from that point on, not only was she coaching me, but she also was helping me become a coach.
That's amazing. I mean, it really is. And I mean, I had a similar situation, the race car bunk bed and the sweatpants, a little different than that. But, meeting my mentor, she was very unassuming. And little did I know, though, and I refer to her as my Yoda, affectionately as my Yoda. Mm-hmm. And she was maybe like 4'11", and she was in her later 60s. And the last person maybe I thought would hold the answer. But for whatever reason, I just listened. And,
I love that.
And again, connected the dots. And so it gives me chills because I can put myself in your position and the same exact thing. I'm thinking the whole time I'm looking for answers, and I mean, people are still seeking out whether it's nutrition or personal training advice from me. I think that I have it all together, but I can't hold it together myself. I don't know what's wrong with me. And basically the same thing, meaning like, sure, there's something wrong with you. There's no doubt about it, but you're okay. Like, meaning everything's okay. And it's your job not always to do more, but to release what you're holding on to. And I mean, I'll never forget it. She taught me about the Heart Math Institute and, the energy that we actually hold. And I'm like, what is she talking about? But for some reason, because she was so unassuming, I accepted it. I didn't have the same wall that I would put up with a lot of the other practitioners that I thought maybe I knew more than because I had read this many books or whatever it might be. And I think it's all a part of our journey, right? For some reason,
totally.
At that point in my life, I was ready to listen and accept. And that's
exactly.
I love hearing those stories. One of my favorite part about, chatting with other people in this space is that they have this. So now tell me, how did you begin to work with people and share your message? And what did it look like, let's say, 10 years ago? And what does it kind of look like today? How's that morphed?
Oh, I think it's just, the format hasn't changed. I never had a particular structure I put people through because I really believe that limits the growth, and all my client sessions have been guided by the client in terms of what they really need. And then I also feel very guided. I feel like I have like an unseen team that works with me, and that in so many ways, like I become kind of an instrument. And yes, I bring my practical training, my life experience, but I always feel like there's a spiritual dimension that's happening at the same time with people. And so that's been, ever since I started. I think when I first started, when I was like 26 years old, I was, I had notes. I'd take notes on everybody. And I was way more attached to making sure the client got a result. And now I've learned that that's not my job really, because that creates pressure on them unconsciously, on me, and it makes it a more goal-oriented approach versus like what truly is in the highest good of the client and what do they really need in this moment. And my primary job, no matter what I'm doing, is just to really hold a space of compassion. I think that's one of my gifts. I think that's one of the superpowers, especially of the feminine, is just to hold the space of unconditional love, similar to what Mona did for me. Of like, whatever you say, whatever you share, whatever you're struggling with, it's okay. Like, no shame, no judgment. This is just a really safe space for you. Can I answer your question specifically? I think that it's evolved in the sense of, I feel I'm working at a higher frequency with people now, instead of just being focused on how can I help them achieve their goals.
And what type of goals do people come to you with? So I'm sure you get a lot of referrals now. What would you say are the top 1, 2, 3 things that people want to make some type of transformation in their life with?
Yeah. Well, by the time most people come to me, they've tried a lot of other things, other therapists, other coaches, and they're just like, I just want to be done. And so they come when they already have a lot of personal growth awareness, but things just aren't changing yet. Like they know they have abandonment issues because their father left when they were 5. They know they have issues with intimacy because they were molested. They can connect dots, but they can't seem to change. They haven't done kind of the deepest healing work needed for them to really experience liberation from the pain, which then creates transformation. Because my approach is, once you heal old wounds and start to reprogram the brain and shift belief systems and actually forgive, then transformation is just a result of it. People are always trying to change their circumstances versus heal old wounds. Because I really believe old wounds that cause limiting beliefs are what perpetuates undesirable conditions for people. And so once you heal those, then transformation just naturally happens because you're creating from a much different place.
I would agree. And just to see if I can understand that, to a better level, and I don't know if, we're on the same page with this, would you say that you have essentially embedded programs in the subconscious that are just playing on loop? You're aware of them or not aware of them, but either way, you don't know how to erase or rewrite those programs so that you would then better connect with whether a vibration or energy or way of a thought process of connect with what you do have, because where you're at right now doesn't literally vibrate with the energy that you want to be at.
Exactly. It was like for me, a bunch of girls passing around a note in 4th grade or 5th grade saying, "Don't be my friend." In that moment, there was shame, there was hurt, there was sadness, there's probably some anger. And then there was the belief that was formed, I did something wrong, I'm not likable, I don't belong. So that became my programming, consciously and unconsciously. And it became, I developed compensatory strategies like overachieving to try to make up for that. It limited me in terms of my ability to make friends and feel like I belonged in the world. And so it wasn't until I went back and healed that wound, let the emotion come up and out, had compassion for myself, worked on reframing the beliefs, forgave the people that did it, that I was able to shift out of that story and out of that vibration, and then was able to really connect with people and to make amazing friends and to feel like I belonged. Because we can't just solve a wound like I don't belong by pushing ourselves to go out and make new friends. Because then even if we have the friends, we'll still question, do they like me? Do I really belong? We have to go back, and this is what I teach in a lot of my programs, we have to go back to that younger part and help that part of us heal and understand so that new programming can be formed, because our unconscious mind drives 95% of our behavior. So it's massively important to understand what's going on in our unconscious, which is basically just old memories that aren't in the forefront of our mind, but it's like our file system in a sense of our life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because even if you did get the friends, inevitably you'd go back to, your set point and you'd drive them away somehow, and you would blame it on them or blame it on whatever, but you wouldn't have known why it happened. And so, I do agree with you that there has to be some resetting of the system, rewiring, however you want to frame it. And I do like that, but I would love to hear, I know it's going to be different for everyone, because people might jump in with both feet. They might work on it every day. I'm a big fan of repetition, not to force yourself to do anything, but to make it essentially intuition, like it just becomes a part of who you are. So one thing that I've seen in my practice is that, I can help people get well from the autoimmune, whatever it is. And, rough time period is somewhere around 12 to 16 weeks. But some people, when they're then left to their own devices, might just slide back. And it's because there are much deeper things going on. Like there are stress patterns and whatever it might be. So how did you, change yours, and how long did it take? You don't have to go through specifics, but was this like, oh, it just hit me and I had an aha moment like one day and everything was different after that? Or did it take a little bit of a process?
I think both. I think sometimes we can have aha moments that creates an instant shift. And other times it is a process. I think most times it is a process, and I don't think we're ever there. I don't think we're ever done. Part of being a human on the planet is you're going to continue to evolve and you're going to continue to heal. And once you open kind of Pandora's box of like looking back and getting into personal transformation, it's like part of your soul or psyche goes, oh, wow, like this person's up for change. So we're going to keep bringing things up. And that can be really scary for people because it's like, oh, wow, like I healed these issues with my parents, but now I realize I've got, this other thing over here that I have to look at. And so it is a process. I love the quote, growth is a process, not an event. And it's so different for everyone. But one thing that I will say unequivocally is that with the more tools that I have, with the more work that I've done, with the more support that I have, my length of time between suffering or what I like to call expectation hangovers, which is disappointment or having something happen that's undesirable, my length of time between those situations gets so much longer. And the length of time suffering when something comes up gets shorter because I have more tools to move myself through it quickly. So it's not like we don't ever suffer, there's never disappointment, but it doesn't happen as often and we don't sit in it as long.
That's perfect. I mean, exactly. And I typically just say it's not that suffering is inevitable, because once you get really self-aware and you've been doing this for a while, you learn this is all part of the human experience, and you can decide to frame that however you want, meaning that, am I really suffering right now? Or is this a natural state of growth? Is this a natural part of who I am? Or what can I learn from this? And on the really bad days where it's just a bad day, it is what it is, I always just say, you know what, this day I'm going to give it to, whatever the suffering is. But when I go to bed tonight and I wake up tomorrow, it's a new day and that's it. And so I think we have to feel it. We can't suppress it. We can't push it back down, but we can reframe it. And then just like you said, it's like, how quickly can I move on past this? I think that ends up being one of the greatest things of self-growth, is that you're never going to be able to stop the so-called bad things from happening in life,
right?
But you do get to decide how you decide to look at that.
Yeah, I like to say feel, deal, heal. Feel it, allow yourself to feel it, don't suppress it. Deal with it, use your tools, go into it, give yourself expression, do the quote unquote personal growth work, and then heal it. Eventually forgive, form new beliefs, and start looking forward.
And do you do all this, your teaching that you do you it through a specific technique, or is it asking questions? Is it kind of like becoming more self-aware? Is it emotional freedom technique, MDR? What goes on in the personal transformation and personal growth programs you have?
Oh my gosh, so much.
you could just, so it's much. A little bit of everything, or you can give specifics if you want.
Yeah. So in my mastery course, what we basically do is talk about why disappointment happens and how it's an opportunity for transformation. And then we look at it on the emotional level. So how do we deal with the feelings? Because I believe that comes first. Everybody says feelings are a response to a thought, but I think in so many of our core wounds, we had a feeling like shame or anger or fear, and then boom, the thought comes. Now we can create feelings with thoughts. I can create anxiety if I think about something in the future that I'm nervous about that I have no control over. But I think that when we're dealing with healing core wounds, we've got to start with the emotional level. And then we look at the mental level, limiting beliefs, stories, what we make things mean. And then we look at the behavioral level. So that's when we start to uncover all the behavior that's 95% driven by our unconscious mind. And how do we get that number down so that more of our behavior is driven by our conscious mind? So we're more at choice. So we take more responsibility, divide that word, responsibility, the ability to respond to things. And that's when we start looking at our compensatory strategies, the modes of behavior that we do, not because we like them, but because we think we have to stay safe or get validation. For example, mine was being an overachiever. I thought if no one likes me, I've got to be an overachiever. Another example could be people pleasers. I've got to make sure everybody else is happy. I got to avoid any conflict or confrontation. I just have to suppress all my own feelings and not have boundaries because I'm only loved if I make other people happy. And then also looking at what I call avoidance traps. As a coach, I've seen, people talk about what they want, but I see people spend way more time and energy avoiding what they don't want. And we fall into traps like the rejection traps, the lack of control trap, the fear of what other people are thinking trap. And we stop taking action. We stop behaving in a way that we want to behave because we're afraid of rejection or losing control or what other people think. And then after the behavioral level, we really look at a spiritual level. I believe everybody has a soul curriculum. There's some life lessons we're all here to learn. How do we adopt more of a seeker mindset? And then how do we bring spirituality into our everyday life? What does our own unique spiritual practice look like? What does our relationship with a higher power look like for each one of us? And then also, like, how do we want to be of service to the world? Because I think that is spirituality in action. So that's the general, very cliff note overview of how I work with people, either one-on-one or especially in my programs, is taking them through those 4 levels.
That's great. And would you mind sharing maybe one tip that someone could say, okay, I want to look more into your programs, I want to look more into this, but what's one thing that I might be able to do right now, whether it's a question to ask yourself every morning or that would begin you on the path to your own personal growth or transformation?
Well, let's start with compassion, because I think that when an individual can start to feel incredible compassion with himself or herself, things start changing. And my favorite tool for that is to get a picture of yourself from when you were younger, like 5 or under, and look at it every day. Like, can spend, a few minutes in the morning looking into your own eyes, connecting with that little one, the person that was so knew they were lovable, didn't have insecurities, like just was pure and we could say untainted, innocent, and just really know that little guy or little girl still lives inside of you. And if you can connect with that picture, there's something that happens when we look at a baby or a young, like toddler picture of ourselves, where we drop from our head to our heart. I know no other tool that moves us into self-compassion faster. And when we're in that place of self-compassion, then we're way more likely to have more kind thoughts to ourselves, have the courage to finally address some things that we haven't wanted to address. Because one of the main reasons, Stephen, that people don't want to deal with their past is because most people are ruthless with themselves. Most people, including me, this has been one of my biggest areas I've had to grow in, are just really hard on themselves. And we're hard on ourselves because that's what we think we need to be motivated. And we just all have this really nasty inner critic. And so it prevents us from sometimes doing the healing work that we need to do because we're almost afraid of ourselves. So that tool of just dropping into compassion on a daily basis, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. I've never heard that before. That's a huge tip, right there. And understanding that there's nothing that you have to do, right? There's no person that you have to be. So we do create our constructs of our own mind of what life is supposed to be. And sometimes maybe we should stop and say, now that I'm a year older, 10 years older, I'm no longer 22 years old. Is this what I still want my life to be? And kind of take a step back. And one thing I found, I don't know if you find this, in your practice as well, is sometimes not, just like you were saying before, this is what made me think of it, is that a lot of people are focused on what they don't want to be doing and what they're trying to move away from, which of course we know then draws more of that energy towards ourselves or thoughts about what we don't want, which makes us feel more depressed, more overwhelmed, more anxious, more fearful, rather than shifting their attention as to what life could be. Mm-hmm. And when I see that, even if it's just a hobby, like I'm not asking people to totally change their life, but is there something that you could do for you that your heart, your body kind of speaks to you as like, oh, I wish I could do this? Meaning like a lot of people feel they need to stop everything they're doing, burn all the bridges, and then just move over to that. When it could be an hour a couple times a week or whatever it might be. And I've seen people then, every cell in their body start to become energized.
Absolutely.
Without the foods changing necessarily or the supplements, whatever it might be. So I just want to see if you've seen that in your practice, because I just know in my own life, if I have something that I consider a worthy goal or ideal, not that I have to do it, but that I want to do it, that it's something that I'm enjoying the process of, I wake up with more energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, don't prioritize themselves in the way that they need to. We can justify having external goals for our business or for our kids or for, changing the way we look or something like that. But what about just self-care? What about just nurturing yourself? What about just doing something that makes you feel good? I think sometimes we can get so goal-orientated that we forget that self-care is a very honorable goal. And if we do more of that, then we're way more likely to be excited about the external goals as well. So I think just blocking off what I like to call self-care time. And I have a really easy practice for that, where it's a 40-day practice, because a lot of yogis and scientists will agree that it takes 40 days for a discipline to become a habit. So it's why none of us forget to brush our teeth. It's a habit. At one point, it was a discipline when our parents were telling us, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. But now it's a habit. We don't really think about it. It's programmed. So I like to have something called a stop, start, and change for 40 days where you pick one thing to stop doing. Maybe it's stop being on your phone after 9 p.m. One thing to start doing, for example, waking up, setting your timer for 2 minutes and just sitting and breathing. You can call it meditating, you can call it a mindfulness practice, but just one thing to start doing that supports just calming your nervous system down, self-care, and bringing your attention to you. Or it could be using that tip of looking at the picture of yourself every day. And then one thing to modify. Maybe you realize you've been stressed and there's been more wine in your life than normal. And maybe it's modifying that back. Or maybe you just it's not necessarily more wine, but I know it would probably serve me not to have so much alcohol in my system. So I'm going to cut back from 5 glasses to 2 a week or something like that. And I've just found that's a very quote unquote goal-orientated, practical approach to making shifts in terms of our self-care that really do add up over time.
I'd agree. And you do have to start there. It's like, one thing can I add? What one thing can I take away? And so I think that's really practical advice. And then you get that small win. And if you can do that, well, maybe you could do one more thing. And I really like that approach. And I've absolutely seen that work, and I agree with it. And one thing I try to tell people is that you're allowed to enjoy life. It's almost like you need to give people permission.
You're supposed to.
You're supposed to, right? It's like, what is this all about? And you're not going to wait until you're 70 years old and you're retired, because you're going to be in a different stage of your life. Yes, you'll enjoy it then, but it's different than this stage that you're in now. So it doesn't have to be you always fighting up against something. And that was a big thing for me, because my mindset was always, there's a wall in front of me. I'll just put my head down and run through it. And, that was it. I didn't know that there were other ways to go around the wall. Or maybe I decide I'm just going to not go through the wall around. I'm just going to walk the other way. And so, just being able to enjoy life. And that's such a big part of it. And it's funny, but I needed that myself. I had to be able to tell myself, you don't always have to be doing. Sometimes doing is not doing. It's, relaxing and enjoying yourself. Right. And self-care is such a big part of that. So
such a big part.
One thing I'd like to hear too is you have all this knowledge, you've accumulated the knowledge, but what new thing interests you right now? Because I don't know about you, but for me, it's not just saying, well, what else can I add? But it's more like, that's new, that's interesting. I like maybe it's something within Ayurvedic medicine. It's been around 6,000 years, but they're talking about it, they're speaking about it in a different way. What are you enjoying right now, at least looking into from either a technology standpoint or from some type of methodology of teaching or learning?
Well, I'm super into what I would call somatic and experiential work. So breath work is something that both my fiance and I are really loving and gravitating, because it does so many things. It calms your nervous system. It helps release trauma without you having to know what it is. It can take you to a very, very heightened place spiritually. And I think that most of us just don't breathe. We don't breathe well. We aren't getting enough oxygen. Our nervous systems are in fight or flight for so much of the time. So I'm really, really loving breath work and that experience. And then the other thing that I'm super passionate about, especially finding the love of my life after a divorce at 31 and spending a lot of time on my own going, where is he? Is it ever going to happen? What's wrong with me? Why can't I find anyone? But really feeling like I just wanted to hold out for the kind of love that I dreamt about since I was a little girl. Not like fairy book, unrealistic love, but a true, what we call a twin flame, a true soulmate, a person that was going to help me grow emotionally, spiritually, in every level. And now that I'm in this relationship and learning, all the things that come up in relationship and all the tools that are needed, because, there's personal growth and things we do on our own. And then there's a whole other technology and tools for how to really grow in a relationship, right? So those are the two things that have really got me fired up right now.
That's great. And if you don't mind sharing, when you found the love of your life, were you actively seeking that person, or were you being okay in your own space? Okay, so you were. Yes.
Both.
That's good. Both. That's good to know.
I was having longing without wanting.
Okay,
and what I mean by that is, I've known that whenever I really, really want something and I'm highly attached to it, I push it away, because when we're paying attention to the absence of something, all we're focused on is the absence of it. So we just create more absence. But I also tried I just don't care. I'm just going to surrender, but it was more like resignation. And I'm just not going to like care at all and just kind of be happy on my own. And I went through that phase for a while, but it came to a point where I was pretending that I was happy single when truly my heart's desire was to be in a loving relationship. So where I eventually got to, Stephen, was I love my life now. I love me. I'm going to be the best partner to me right now. And my heart is open and I'm honoring my desire and making it okay that I'm calling in a relationship. And that was really the place that brought it in, that surrendered place, but still holding on to the intention and the vision.
I've seen that really seem to be the best for, again, we're going to call it achieving a goal, like getting into the relationship that you wanted. But from my perspective, it's that you should be working towards it, but not stressing about it, and also saying, but I'm okay either way.
Yeah,
and by saying that, you're saying you're not needy. It will happen when it's meant to happen. It's not that you don't want it to, but you're going to continue to move forward and be happy in life. And I think, doing that, I mean, if people can just even take that tip away, it's don't say it, nothing matters, I don't care. You care, right? You can never deny that because you're on a journey, like you're on a mission to experience life. And so we all want different experiences. So it's being okay with yourself, being content, but also it's okay to want, I really believe it's okay to want to achieve those goals, because if not, then it's kind of, sometimes life does have not as much meaning. And I really do believe we're supposed to be on a journey somewhere, right? Whatever our goals may be.
Yes, so, absolutely.
And this has been a really fun conversation, and you kind of taking us on your journey and sharing all the different techniques that you use as well. But I know this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I'd love to hear more about the different programs you have, or maybe what you're most interested in teaching right now. If you could share that with my audience, that'd be great.
Oh, thank you. Well, all you podcast listeners, I'd love for you to come over to Over It and On With It, which Stephen will be on as a guest. The way that podcast works is every Saturday, there's a thought leader that I have a conversation with, and like your favorite that you're listening to now, and not me, Stephen. And every Wednesday, you get to hear a live life coaching session. So, and I do live interventions with people that are unscripted, unproduced, and unedited. I don't know anything about the person before we get on. So you really get to hear a lot of these tools in action and hear me work with someone. So it's like sitting into a therapy/life coaching session. People really love it. They learn a lot that way. We learn a lot through listening to other people's experiences because our own defenses are down. And that's called Over It and On With It. And then I'd love to give your tribe a free gift. I have a 6 steps to intuitive decision making. It's a very practical way to start to tap into your intuition, because I know a lot of people would love to be more in touch with their intuition, would love to make decisions more intuitively instead of being in limbo and going back and forth and running to 6 people to get their opinion, like to really be confident in your decisions. So that's my 6-step intuitive decision-making process. And you also get an ebook from me, which is 32 days to up-level your mind and uplift your heart, just daily things you can read. And all you have to do to get that is text the number 444-999. So again, just text 444-999. And in the subject line, the message of the text, just put my name, Christine, just my first name, CHRISTINE. And you'll get both the ebook and the 6 steps to intuitive decision making.
Excellent. Well, we love free gifts. So I'll put that in the show notes here today as well. We'll link that up to that, be able to text that, which is fantastic. And what I'd like to do right now is there also a place maybe on social media people can connect with you? They can, just learn more about what's going on in your world.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So Instagram is my favorite. Christine Hassler is my handle there. And then I'm also on Facebook quite a bit, and it's Christine Hassler. And I have tons of videos on YouTube too, if you go to my YouTube channel, and that's Christine Hassler as well.
Excellent. Christine, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. I can't wait to continue to connect in the future. Thank
you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be on your show.
Have an amazing day.
Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stevencabral.com/courses.